I'd like to start this evening's King's Board of Education work session. Mr. Morrow, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Phillips,
Here.
Ms. Groff, Ms. Cowan,
Here.
Mr. Skrull, Mr. Belfrom.
Here. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Morrow?
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Ms. Groff,
Yes.
Ms. Cowan,
Yes.
Mr. Belfrom.
Yes. Right. First tonight, we have reports and presentations. I'll turn it over to Mr. Sears.
Yes, thank you, President Belfrom, Board of Education. Two reports and presentations this evening that we'll jump into in a second. But before we get started this evening, the past few days of pretty awesome things happening in Kings Local School District with our students. Like Division I school in Cincinnati area has achieved this accomplishment. We're pretty excited about what that means. And so we've made some decisions recently to create greater access for all of our Kings community to be present, not either virtually or physically to that event. It's the OHSA. We're thankful over them putting it at noon on Friday so that we had to think creatively on how we use our space and time. And so we're excited about that. We have we are releasing our high school at 10:30 so that our students and staff can attend. We have a couple of Spirit buses full of students that will get fed also on the way there to be prepared for that event. And then we have quite a few other staff members throughout the district that are going to take advantage of the opportunity to go and support our students. And many students are being pulled out for excused absences to attend physically in person. So we're expecting a huge crowd. But one of the things that was important to us is to provide an opportunity for all of our students and staff to participate, but we are going to be streaming this match live. OHSAA does contract with a company that provides that opportunity. So we have streaming subscription that we will be broadcasting throughout the entire district. So we're able to engage a larger portion of our school community in what's going to be a memorable day. So we're excited about that. We're thankful. We appreciate these are amazing young ladies and coaches that have done great work all year. They came in the year with an extremely high ranking and they've held that all year. So this is not a fluke. This is one of those things they have earned, and they're just an incredible example of all the things that are right in Kings Local Schools. So I say that because we're really excited about Friday, appreciative of our administration and our coaches and our athletic office. When a team makes it to the state level, there's an incredible amount of organization, logistics, and things that take place. And one of which is, like this evening, our volleyball team is practicing down at the Cintas Center. Our athletic department was able to acquire the Cintas Center in the big arena to give our kids the opportunity to experience the depth perception so they can be fully prepared to compete on Friday. So pretty good stuff. We're excited about it. And I appreciate the board's support on the communication on where we are. Obviously, decisions like this are not easy, as we want to give our folks the opportunity, but also hold academics in high regard. So I feel like we have a balance, and I feel like we're going to be in a good spot Friday. So thankful for that. But it should be a great weekend. So when they win on Friday, the state championship is at 3:00 on Saturday at the Wright State Nutter Center. So we will not be streaming that live because I think everybody hopefully will be there. So as we move on to our presentations this night, we have two. The first one is I'm going to have Kim Sellers here. So Kim is our social emotional health coordinator in our district. And Kim is going to bring the board up to speed on some new law changes and some requirements that we have to adhere to as we move on to this school year. And so let's take advantage of the opportunity to have Kim here. We're appreciative of her work and thankful for her bringing this to us.
Just want a quick disclaimer. I'm getting over a cold, so my Darth Vader vibes that I'm sending, I apologize for there's a little bit of issues with clarity here. So do the best that we can to power through this. House Bill 123, which is the Save Students Act and Aaron's Law, are new this year. And you've probably been hearing a lot about it, but I just wanted to take some time to go a little bit deeper into give a higher level overview of the laws and kind of the background of that, and then go into some more detail about where we're at Kings and what we're doing going forward with that. So looking at this, the Save Students Act, House Bill 123, supports Ohio's strategic plan for education with respect to school security and youth suicide assessment. It has 5 required components, and threat assessment being one of those. Now, we've actually already been doing threat assessment for many years, so there's not going to be a lot of changes to that. It just kind of tightens things up and does, there's certain models that are approved, a plan. So we've been working closely with Mr. Lecky and Mr. Spinner over that for the last several years, and just uploading the training component, and that's required every 3 years, I believe, every 3 years. And so each building will have grades 6 through 12 required to have a threat assessment team, although we do have one in every building in our district. The anonymous reporting system, again, that's something that we've already been doing, the Stay Safe, Speak Up, which is on our website. Emergency management plans kind of go hand in hand along with that threat assessment, and just a protocol for what we do and how we do that. And then this is where some stuff is new. And again, some stuff we've already been doing: prevention education, and then suicide awareness and violence prevention readiness. Youth suicide awareness is already required per section 3319-073 of the Ohio Revised Code. So our staff has been receiving that training annually, or every 2 years, through Public School Works. So that's something that hasn't changed. We'll just continue to meet that requirement. But in terms of where the big changes are, is the prevention education. There are 3 components to that: suicide awareness, safety training, and violence prevention, and social inclusion. And it requires that all students grades 6 through 12 receive this education, 1 hour for each component of those 3 that are listed there. And it's not 3, it's not just a total of 1 hour, it's one, so it'll be a total of 3 different hours. And the statute around this requires that it's evidence-based and it's approved model by ODE. So if you look on the Ohio Department of Education under these 2 laws that I'm getting ready to talk a little bit about, they'll have all of the training. So we've vetted these, and we have worked closely. I've been to lots and lots of meetings throughout the summer, coaching sessions, and trying to just kind of figure out what is best for our district. So we do have a full plan in place, which I'll go more in depth about. Aaron's Law, I'm just going to give again a high level overview about that, and then talk a little bit, this thing right here, talk a little bit more about that. So Aaron's Law, the Ohio's 134th General Assembly enacted Senate Bill 288, which updated the prescribed curriculum for health education. So this went into effect on April 4th of 23, and it adds requirements regarding child sexual abuse prevention, dating, and sexual violence. So Ohio became the 38th state to actually enact this into law. The significance of Aaron's Law is that Erin Marin, she's an author and an activist, that her life has made it her life mission. She's a child sexual abuse survivor, and she's made it her life's mission to make sure that this law gets enacted into every state. She was sexually assaulted, unfortunately, by a friend's uncle at a sleepover in kindergarten, and then again at age 8.5 was sexually assaulted by her cousin. Both of those men told her that it was a secret and that nobody would believe her if she told them. And so she stayed silent, only because her education came from the perpetrator. So she's wanting this to get into schools as the most logical place, because most of the time, any child that is sexually assaulted or sexually abused is by somebody that they know. So the statistics on that is 1 in every 5 girls and 1 in every 20 boys will be sexually abused in their lifetime, or as a child. So she was saying things like, we do bus drills, we do tornado drills, but we don't do anything for our child safety. The requirements around this is annual child sexual abuse prevention in K through 4, and then dating and sexual violence in grades 7 through 12 as a part of the health curriculum. And that's just one time throughout their 7 through 12 as a student. So again, evidence-based includes, they have requirements for parent notification and opting out, which we'll get to that a little bit more too in depth. So the next slide here just looks at what we're doing here at Kings. I know I've been to several meetings and a lot of schools are kind of trying to figure out where they're going to go with this and which curriculum they're going to select because it is difficult to fit it into. So 1 hour for purposes of a school is either one bell, which could be 48 minutes or 1 hour. For House Bill 123, we are luckily already had sources of strength brought in this year. So that is an evidence-based approved program. And that is a program with adult advisors and peer advisors that focuses on strengths. And it's an upstream approach instead of finding out why a student has, or trying to figure out why somebody's already waiting until they're falling in. We're going to go upstream and figure out why they're falling in. So it's very much giving coping skills and collective and individual strengths using that upstream approach. It's been very effective. So far, we're just really getting started, but it's been well received. The students really enjoy this, and I think our adult advisors are fantastic. And then in terms of the social inclusion piece, we're going to start with Hello from Sandy Hook Promise. Because next year Sources of Strength will have that in there, but when they did their evidence-based piece for the research, that part was not included. They're resubmitting that, and next will take care of the whole program. And then for 6th grade, we're doing Start with Hello, which we've been doing for years, and that happens to be an approved program. And then Erica's Lighthouse or Sandy Hook Promise for the suicide awareness. In terms of Aaron's Law, power program, we've been doing this. This is through Safe on Main in Warren County, and many schools in Warren County are already using this in their health classes. And we've been doing this at the junior high for a while. And then those two have already taken place. We sent out parental notification and an opt-out when we did those back in October and November. For grades K through 6, we're going to look at using the Child Safety Matters curriculum, which I have a copy of it back here for K. It's very developmentally appropriate. It's through the Monique Burr Foundation, and the Child Advocacy Center in Warren County is going to deliver that curriculum. And I think she said there's like 5 schools, neighboring districts that are going to be using the same curriculum. What it looks like in kindergarten may look different than 3rd grade and 4th grade. It's animated and using words that are a developmental 20-minute increments, doing in small groups. It's not an assembly style, so they can have eyes on the children at all times and make sure everybody's, safe and nobody's, experiencing. We'll have an option for opting out, probably the media center. And it's built around 5 safety rules that children can use, like knowing your address and spotting red flags, safe adults, speaking up in an unsafe situation and getting away in a dangerous situation. We're also going to be offering a parent information session on November 15th at 7 p.m. So that's a week from tomorrow. And that will be virtual, and parents, it'll also be recorded for parents that can't attend. So if there's any questions, the Child Advocacy Center representative that we're working with will be sharing some of the curriculum, offering an opportunity to ask questions. And again, parents can opt out. And if at any time there's a piece in the law that talks about if a parent is interested in reviewing the curriculum, they can come to the school and set up a time, schedule time to review that as well. So that in a nutshell. Do you have any questions about the curriculum or the process for what we're doing here?
You mentioned that it's 3 hours. Like, tell me again.
I'm sorry, it's 3 hours for House Bill 123. So there are 2 separate pieces
Okay.
of legislation that came down this year. So it's very confusing.
Okay.
But Aaron's Law, it depends on the age group. You can do it in 2 45-minute sessions or 4 20-minute sessions. So for our K through 4, she's going to come in and do it in 4 different 20-minute sessions, just because of attention spans at that age developmentally. And then for our 5th and 6th grade, they're going to do it in the 2 45-minute sessions. I guess I should have given the dates too. Kings Mill Elementary will be going first. They're starting on November 20th, and CIS will be right behind them. And the other 2 buildings will be the 2nd semester.
Kim, could you please since Aaron's Law is new, our families haven't received communication on that or experience, what can a parent in grades K through 6 especially expect over the coming weeks as we get prepared for that.
So they'll be receiving a letter that kind of outlines this bill, along with a link so they can click on it, kind of go and look around and see how this originated, pretty much what I've shared with you here this evening. And then they'll be able to look at the Monique Burr Foundation and the Child Safety Matters, kind of look through that. And then there'll be some buildings, I think most buildings are going to do a Google form. So if they want to opt out, they can just do it directly through that. And that'll go back to the school, and there'll be plenty of time. So those for Kings Mill Elementary, that'll be going out this week.
And then on this 15th at 7 PM, is that, it says it's a parent information center, but is it basically, are they going to teach the curriculum like they're teaching it to the kids, or not necessarily?
She's just
more
going to give an
informational?
overview and some, just kind of share a little bit of it. It is proprietary, so she can't just, but share a little bit about it and then have a Q&A session. So if
Okay.
there's actual detailed questions that they want to go into, there'll be an opportunity for that.
Okay.
And I, like I said, I do have the curriculum here tonight if you wanted to take a look at it, and then these as well, just a little bit more information about Aaron's Law.
Do we have any more questions, Mrs. Sellers? Thank you. Give it back to Mr. Sears. Oh.
Yes.
If the board has any questions after reviewing any of that information, you can reach out to myself or Kim, and we'll get the answers that you need. I think we're just trying to be communicative, have the board understand the direction, and then give the parents all the information, and they can make an informed decision on their participation. So next on our agenda is moving forward into our community advisory team presentation. As the majority of, not all our community knows, over the past few months, we've been working diligently to not only analyze the capacities and the current enrollment for our district and some of the overcapacity numbers that we've had in our district. But months ago, the Board of Education contracted with SHP architectural firm to do a master planning process. Part of that process brought together a community advisory team of about between 30 to 45-ish people here or there. And part of the master plan was to present to, through that process, was to present the Board of Education with a recommendation coming from the community advisory team for a potential master plan moving forward. So we're very fortunate this evening to have two members of the community advisory team with us this evening. Laura Freitag and Shantae Pohl are both parents and community members in our district. They will talk a little bit about themselves and their story. I will leave that to you guys. But they have information they would like to share with the administrative team and the Board of Education on kind of the outcomes and where we are in the master planning process. So ladies, thank you both for being here.
I don't know if I should hold this. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you for allowing Shantae and I to speak to you all tonight. I know that I've met many of you before, but I'd like to give you just a few more details about how I ended up in front of you this evening with my friend and fellow alumni and PTO partner. So in 1985, my parents decided it was time for a larger house. They looked at two places, one in Westchester and one in Landon. Some might call it fate, but I consider it more divine intervention that we ended up residing in the house in Pond Woods, the house that my mom still lives in to this day. In October of my first grade year, I found my 6-year-old self in Miss Weisgerber's room 107 at JF Burns. And today that's Mr. Weinbrenner's counseling space. Every part of me wanted to cry as the new kid who walked into a room full of strangers. But Miss Weisgerber got down on her knees. She looked me in the eye and she welcomed me to my life as a knight. For the next 3 years, I moved through that building, and in 3rd grade, I was in the then new wing where our kindergarten teachers now have their classrooms. It's that very hallway where my mom would eventually teach kindergarten. I think she taught your son, actually. I always say she's famous. We go out and people recognize her even still. That's also the same hallway where I brought my 4 boys to start their lives as knights as well. So only my youngest remains there now, and he's in 3rd grade. I had the great privilege to serve on my own elementary school as the PTO president, and I have fittingly worked on their yearbook, collecting memories for the students to reflect on for years to come. In 4th grade, I went to KME. Actually, that's this building that we stand in tonight is my KME. Every day I heard our principal, Mr. Payne, give the announcements and tell us to have a lovely day. I lip synced Twist and Shout on the stage downstairs and one of the first putting on the hits, a tradition which now lives at Columbia Intermediate School. It's not my 5th grade twins thing to do putting on the hits, but I'll go and watch them play basketball instead. And I've returned to this space in the last couple of years, listening to teachers and staff give presentations for the Council of Teaching and Learning. I guess this building just wants me to keep on learning in new and lovely ways. Eventually, I would move through here to KJH, where I'm now the PTO president. And I see the same hallways, classrooms, gym, and band room through my oldest son's 7th grade eyes. He basically sees what I saw. Eventually, in 1997, I graduated from Kings High School. If you must look at my senior picture, it's there on the screen for you. It was the 90s. I graduated from Kings High School. It rained on graduation day, so rather than having graduation on the football field, we held graduation in the gym. Yes, the same gym where we will attend Night Madness on Saturday night, the same gym where my brother and sister played basketball, the same gym where I've dropped my boys off for basketball camp. After college in 2001, I applied for a job here, but there were no English teacher positions open, so I took a job at Turpin High School, where I loved teaching for 10 years. I resigned shortly after becoming a mother, a decision that I have not regretted in the least. And my husband, a Centerville graduate, we don't hold that against him, and I have been residents of this district since 2008. Our decision to send our kids to Kings has been easy. We love our schools. We love our community. And like so many other Kings alumni and community members, we are thrilled to send our children to the schools. While I work now as a program coordinator and I'm not in teaching right now, I love serving our public schools, the schools that were my schools as a volunteer. It's just my favorite thing to do. It's like our little hashtag. We're just happy to help. I love and admire and respect the teachers, the administration, and the staff who work tirelessly with my own children, my neighbors' children, and the children in the whole district. They get up every day and face challenges that we didn't have when I was a student, and certainly not even when I was a teacher. The world around us has changed a lot since the 90s when I was a student, but Kings has always been on top of, if not ahead of the game. So I'm more than humbled to be here before you today to talk about a way forward into the future of challenges and triumphs of the Kings Local School District.
So while Laura graduated from college in 2001, I graduated from Kings in the spring of 2001. It took me, studies in school took me away from this area for about 10 years. But in 2016, my husband and I moved back here, and the decision was pretty easy to move back into the Kings district. We moved back in time for my oldest child, who at the time was starting kindergarten. So he is now in 7th grade at the junior high. I have a 5th grader at Columbia, and my youngest is in 1st grade at JF Burns. When we moved back, I knew that I wanted to play a role in the same PTO that my mom was a part of. And so I got involved in the JF Burns PTO. I met Laura. Our sons were in 1st grade together, and their teacher said, "You two need to know each other." And so we did. And I have served with Laura doing the yearbook. I've done our birthday books program, which if you ever have time to go into the JF Burns Library, it is a walk down memory lane. You can pull a book off the shelf and see all the pictures of little kids who've gone through JF Burns. And currently I am one of the co-presidents for the PTO. I also get the pleasure of hanging out with these two at the Teaching and Learning Council as well. In my professional life, I am a pharmacist. I currently am a professor of pharmacology. And so throughout this process, it was really helpful, I think, to have both sides, an alumni and somebody who works in post-secondary education, as we were asking questions. So we stand here before you today. Oh, and my senior picture is also up there if you want to take a look.
You look exactly the same.
So we stand before you tonight, two King's graduates who have now have children walking the same buildings that we attended. This district is important to us, and we are honored to invite you into the community process that has taken place over the last several months.
So I'd like to just begin by explaining the different people that have been involved over the last 6 to 8 weeks since you all approved SHP to help us through this process. They've been instrumental in guiding us, and they've been so great to work with. So thank you. I'm going to try to name them all, but I know Jeff, Phil, Charlie, and Greg, and I'm sure there are many others behind the scenes that have worked with us through this process. And so thank you. So back in October, staff members, active parents, community members, business owners, and neighboring school district personnel were invited to represent a cross section of our community on what we called the Community Action Team, or we call it CAT. This group held 3 meetings at the beginning, middle, and end of this process. The team was tasked by SHP with dreaming big, and then using realistic goals to narrow down that dream. And then finally, at the end, to reach a consensus on presenting the best plan for your consideration. So if we can go to the next slide. We also had focus groups. There were 8 focus groups that were held for specific parts of our community members. They were able to give voice to and define some specific needs. Specifically from these groups, the CAT was able to consider the needs of our athletic community and of our fine arts community. And then you can go to the next slide. The community was also invited into this process through 2 forums, both of which were held in the auditorium for people to attend in person. These forums were also broadcast live on YouTube and, of course, could be viewed later. The first forum has over 1,400 views, and the second forum has 1,000 views. At the end of each forum, a survey was offered for people to give feedback. We'll talk a lot more about those surveys in a little bit. And then 2 other ways that we tried to involve the community was through the district sent mailers to everyone, and that's what they look like. Hopefully everyone got those. And on slide 7, we had social media advertisements for these forums and other information. There are 87,000 views with a reach of 37,000. So a lot of people were aware of what was going on in our district. All this to say that every effort was made to involve our community, both to inform them about the needs of the district and to seek feedback from them in this process.
And so as you can see from those numbers and the results that we got, just in terms of people engaging, our community cares about what happens with our schools, what happens with our students, our faculty, our administration. And so to be a part of the 35 plus people that were taking that feedback in was truly an honor. We're both grateful for that opportunity. What we would like you to see is that we listened. And so the interaction between the community and then the CAT was what we wanted to highlight with this slide. So you can see the CAT met first and we dreamed big. And then we went out, or the administration went out to the community with HSP and said, what do you think? And then that information came back to the CAT team. So it was a back and forth. It was a conversation between the community and CAT as to what do we think is best? What conversations do we need to have? What should we wrestle with? And we continue to do that. On the next slide, you can see that anybody who was interested in having their voice heard had an opportunity and a spot for themselves. So if you were a community member, there were 2 different forums. If you lived in the Landon neighborhood, which is where I live, we had a Landon specific focus group. If your child played athletics, my 5th grader sings in the choir, I was invited to the fine arts focus group as well. So there was a place for you, there was a place for your voice, and we really wanted to hear that feedback. And all of that came to our various CAT meetings. So we started, the first thing that the architecture firm asked us to do is they handed us out these really cool papers. And they said, here, you design, you get to play architect for the night. What would you do? And so from that group, we came up with 11 potential options. Some of those were very quickly eliminated. We are not architects. And so they're like, you can't do that. So those got taken off the table pretty quickly. But then the feasible ones were sent through the channels of the community forums. And we elicited that feedback and said, what do you think? How do you feel about this? What are you concerned about? What do you like? And all of that information was put in a formal survey. We had 2 different formal surveys. But as Laura and I will tell you, when you are part of the community, you have a lot of informal surveys. And so you get to talk to your friends and neighbors. The street that I live on, we have 3 houses that have kids currently in the district. Most of my neighbors have children who have long graduated from King's. And so the conversations that I would have with those neighbors was very different than my neighbors at the end of the street, who make me feel old because they are young and just got married and have no children and are like walking their dog when they're like, why are you standing out here? I'm like, I'm at the bus stop. So like having conversations with them and helping them see that this is an investment for them as well. We also had the opportunity to just talk over the several weeks that we had, both formally and informally. Both of our sons ran cross country, so we had conversations at cross country meets and really get in the community and find out, what do you think? What are you worried about? What do you love? Let us know. So after several weeks and a lot of feedback, there were 2 options that were presented to the community. We had an additions option and a new high school option. So those are the 2 options that were given. And then we basically went out and said, what do you think?
Okay, so at this point, I'm going to share what occurred at the 3rd CAT meeting because we haven't had a forum. After the 1st and 2nd CAT meetings, we had community forums. So the community got to hear what happened at those, but they haven't heard what happened at our last meeting, which was last Wednesday, November 1st. So I'm just going to kind of summarize that meeting for everyone's benefit and catch everyone up so we're all on the same page. So we considered 3 key pieces of information at that final meeting. The first piece of information we considered were the results of the 2nd survey, and there's a lot of graphs right there, and we looked at all those in detail, and I'm not going to go through each graph. We just summarized it on the following slide in this way. So I'm just going to go kind of point by point on this slide so we can really kind of look at these details. So nearly 1,200 people combined responded to those surveys. That's a lot of people. And when we look just at their responses about the new high school option, 82% of all the respondents rated the new high school option at a 3 or above. The language in that survey was neutral was the 3, appropriate was the 4, and very appropriate was the 5. So 68% rated the new high school at 4 or above. And that's a really strong number. If you break all the respondents down and we look at just parents, you can see that the parents rated the high school on average a 4.6, and they rated that additions option as a 2.9. So the language below the 3 was very inappropriate was the 2, and the 1 was very inappropriate. So that's a pretty big difference between 4.6 and 2.9. So you can see what how the parents are feeling about the difference in those 2 options. 74% of parents rated the new high school option as a 3 or higher. If you looked at community members, so this is not parents, and you compare the new high school option to the additions option, the new high school option was an average of 3.2. and 3.1 was for the additions. And again, they were just looking at those individually. So even though there's a pretty narrow margin there, still of the community members, 64% rated the new high school as a 3 or better on that survey. So that's kind of the first piece of information we considered was all those results just about those building options. The second piece of information we considered at that CAT meeting was the financial details. I'm not going to give you all those financial details. I was a English teacher for a reason. But Mr. Morrow is going to give a lot of those details to you, and he'll go through all those specifics so that you will hear what we heard at that meeting. And we did, really, we were interested in that financial piece. It was obviously really important given the times we live in. And the third piece of information that we considered was, and that we discussed at length, was the community's responses to the questions about our neighborhood schools and the comments that so many people took the time to write. We're grateful to the community for all of that thoughtful feedback, and we appreciate our community's engagement. There was a lot of information to sift through. So this input helped us to make the decision to maintain strong neighborhood schools. And so at the end of the meeting, we voted, and Shantae is going to give you the result of that vote, which led to the following recommendation.
So hopefully you can tell the recommendation is a result of several months of hard work, difficult questions, often disagreements, but ultimately an engaged community who was listening to one another, even when we disagreed, in good faith, when we were asking the question, what could be best for our faculty, our students, and our schools? And so this recommendation is a result of that. So at the final CAT meeting, we were asked the following question: which master plan option is most appropriate for the Kings Local School District community? Throughout this entire process, at the very beginning, we had a survey to our community that said, what are your priorities? And the graphics on the left show you the top three. So throughout, as CAT was meeting, we were thinking with these in mind. We want whatever we do to be educationally fantastic. We know we have wonderful teachers. So we want to keep those teachers in environments that allow them to excel to their highest potential. We want to be financially responsible, which is Mr. Morrow. And we want this plan to be community supported. And hopefully we have shown you that throughout the last several months, this plan is ultimately community supported. So when that vote was taken at the meeting on Wednesday, 34 out of 34 people said the new high school option is the plan they believe to be most appropriate.
It's pretty impressive.
Yes, we got everyone agreed. And so what does that option entail? So the new high school option is on the screen for you now. It would look like in our building here, maintaining KECC for our preschool students. Our elementaries would go K-3. Columbia would be a 4 and 5 building with a small addition to compensate for that. The current junior high grades would expand to be 6 to 8, and they would move into the campus that we now know as kind of the junior high and the high school. So they would take over that whole space. And then we would have a new high school for our 9 to 12 grades. So we considered a lot of things before we got to this plan. Some of what this plan entails, a little bit more specifics, is that the high school would help us become future ready with our academic spaces. So we do amazing feats with the spaces that we have, but this high school would just expand what we're able to do for our students. Media specialties, dining spaces. So if you've ever walked into the high school and noticed that we have some dining tables out of the cafeteria, we would like to have dining spaces that are right sized for our students, in addition to athletic spaces and fine arts as well. We do have in this plan the addition at Columbia. That is included, as well as right sizing our elementaries and making improvements to those buildings and the existing KJH and KHS. So junior high, high school, our elementary buildings, and then maybe any other improvements we might need, contingency. If you've ever remodeled your house, you know you got to pay attention to what can happen when you open a wall. And so all of that has been considered in this plan. So this is an all-encompassing what the CAT felt was best based on the community feedback for the district.
Okay, so on just the screen now, you can see our Power Five. So shortly after Mr. Sears arrived in our district, he involved the community in this process of envisioning what were the most important skills that we wanted to teach our students before they left the doors of Kings High School. And so after we were both involved in that process, and that was really fun. And these were the top five, and I know he talks about them all the time because they're so important and they kind of drive our everything that we do in the district. And so we have these five future skills in mind as well as we make this recommendation to you. These skills are, of course, currently being taught effectively at all levels around the district, but we would like to take a moment to think about how a new and updated space could enhance teachers' ability to build these skills even further than what they're doing right now. So we have some
So
fun
what a new
pictures.
high school could be. I mentioned that I am a professor of pharmacology. I currently teach nursing students their pharmacology, which is their drugs. So what do they need to know to safe and effectively administer medications to patients? A lot of my students really could benefit if they had a space in high school where perhaps they could take a class like anatomy, where they could have an anatomy lab before they came. So when we're thinking about collaborative spaces, some of the pictures on the screen show you what those collaborative spaces look like. And as a post-secondary educator, I can really see the value in getting our students really down the line of career readiness with spaces like this.
I know it might not seem like it, but on this next slide, there's a lovely gym. But I don't, how does this gym play into our, five power skills? But that gym could see our entire student body, and we could have an amazing pep rally on Friday morning before we sent that volleyball team off to Wright State, which we can't have a whole school pep rally at this point. And just the centrality that brings to the district to have the whole student body in one place would be impactful, I think, even for our students. And if you look at the smaller pictures at the bottom of that slide, I was a high school teacher. I taught English, and I know it was a long time ago, but teaching like American literature and American history at the same time, if you could have a space like that, like a flexible lab space where you could collaborate with another teacher and there'd be enough space for two classes to meet at a time, and you could really teach some amazing units and give kids an opportunity to really discuss and to just develop their communication with one another and work together on projects like that. And don't get me started on the band room. That would be whew, amazing.
We also were kind of dreaming about what could dining spaces look like that are also well-used spaces. So we only eat for certain periods of the day, but if those spaces could be utilized in multiple ways, maybe the community could come in and use that space, or during the day, the students have their time to eat, but then they also can flow into a collaborative learning space, places where students can come and gather. They can have, my son is in Project Lead the Way in the junior high. And they did a putt-putt golf course recently where they each developed a hole for the putt-putt golf course. But they didn't really have space to do that. And so they were in the hallway, they were on the stage in the cafeteria, they were in the cafeteria, and then they got kicked out because it was something else. So if we could have spaces where students could really feel like there was a place for them to do where their dreams are leading them, that could be really exciting for our district as well.
And then just one more little dreaming slide. Imagine inviting everyone who wanted to come to the world premiere of an alumni written play. And the whole community could fit and watch this world premiere show from our students. Imagine the new electives that could be taught in a space that you could build and present robotics. That's in that bottom right one. There's a little arena there. I know my children love to watch BattleBots. I mean, if they could do BattleBots right there in their classroom, wow. And just, young engineers could really blossom right there in that classroom. Imagine opening a garage door from your classroom into a hallway so that students could work in small groups to edit papers, to spread out a project. and to not disturb one another's thought process, just have a little more room to breathe. Be
Okay.
pretty exciting.
So as a parent, there is something pretty special about standing next to your husband's former second grade teacher, who is now the beloved principal of the elementary school that you also attended, watching your first grader participate in the PTO fun run, the PTO that your mom was a part of, and now you find yourself as one of the presidents of. So we know that the strength of this community is its people. And over the last several months, it was clear to us that the community really stepped up and answered the call. What would be best for this school district? Where could we go from here? And so while there are just two of us standing here tonight, we represent a wider range of people who have put in a lot of time and effort over the last several months. And so we submit this plan for your consideration on behalf of all those in the community that lent their voice to this plan and the community advisory team as a whole. Thank you.
So we're happy to try to answer any questions you might have about this process, the timeline, how we arrived at decisions, and this proposal.
I do have one question. So can you clarify on the King's 6 through 8 middle school?
Mhm.
You said that it would be converting the high school and the junior high into one.
I think that mostly the middle school would be in the current high school, and it would leave the junior high space available
Okay.
for if we needed, to grab a lab space there or something like that. In the breakdown of that slide that had the details of
Mhm.
the new high school and then the addition, and then making kind of existing spaces sort of right, that existing space could be made into something that we might need for the middle school.
So that would not be unused space. It would be space that could be used for
As far as
educational
I
opportunities.
understand from this process, that would not be unused
Okay.
space.
Perfect. Thank you.
Further question, just to clarify or explain to me, where would this new high school go? Just put it out there.
Us to answer?
So there were a couple of different options. One of the first things that the architecture firm explained to us is they looked at the property we have purchased from Kings Island.
Okay.
And they asked the question, can we even put a high school here? Would it fit? And they said yes, and a couple of different options for where that building could go. And then even potentially, as Jeff said, we look at the front yard and maybe we could even put it in the front of the current campus, kind of where the parking lot and the fields are. So we have options, but it would remain very close to the current campus, on the current campus. So we could share facilities that are already there.
Thank you. Any further questions for Shante?
And all of that, of course, is just sort of, we have to really, I think, tear down trees and like look at things, but theoretically it fits in the new space or in the current parking lot.
As far as parking at all of the schools, what discussions existed around parking?
I mean, parking is always a
It's always a
discussion.
discussion.
Even just being on PTOs, it's always a discussion to plan any event, to have any musical especially at JF Burns. But even at Columbia on those nights that, we have two grades coming all at the same time, parking is very challenging. If we were able to move 4th grade to Columbia, that does help our elementary schools. It's one less grade. I think it's not a perfect plan, and hopefully maybe some of that money will be addressed with parking at certain places. Especially, at Columbia, there will be an addition, so there's already going to be work happening there. So maybe parking is addressed in that extra
And at
bracket of money.
the high school, they did some calculations based on the size of the student body. How many parking spaces should we have?
Mhm.
And it was 600 and some.
Yes.
660? Okay, that's what I thought. So 660. So that is included in the plan as well, is can we get the building and can we get the parking spaces? So that has been considered as well.
Perfect.
And was there any discussion as to where the addition on Columbia would be put onto the building?
There was not discussion about that.
That would be,
Yeah.
Yep.
It would be in the academic area, so to make that the classrooms congruent. If you know how Columbia's laid out.
So kind of as you're looking at the building, almost to the
Yeah, to
left hand
the
side there.
left.
Okay.
Looking at the building, it's kind of academic to the left and
Yep.
then kind of shared space to the right. But we did do our own internal kind of test fit to see if one fits.
Okay.
That's-
Any further questions for these illustrious alumni? Mrs. Grau?
I'm just trying to figure out how I want to ask this question because can you talk about fiscal responsibility? What conversations did you hear that let our community know that that was an important piece?
The fiscal responsibility you said?
so Mr. Morrow is going to talk about the specifics, but what we heard just kind of, being in the community was we understand that there's a need. We have the Cropper data that got out. A lot of people understand now that we're out of space and we really need to do something. And so the request was, please do it as carefully as you can. And so reassuring the community that Mr. Morrow is working really hard to make sure that our dollars go as far as possible. Every avenue available to us is being explored. And so in that final meeting, I think the information he's going to share was really helpful for us as a team to see that there were actions behind those words, and we could go out and reassure our community that yes, this plan, not only does it address the needs, but it also keeps in mind that we have a wide variety of people in our district, and our goal is to do this to where it doesn't really harm anyone as much as we can in terms of fiscally responsible.
I also just have been thinking, we did not talk about this. This is just something that I've been thinking about. Because we know it's a big ask. But I do think with the information, you'll see that it will make those dollars that we're asking for go as far as possible. I mean, they will go far and we will get an amazing product at the end. But the other thing I've been thinking about is just the kind of community that we're in, that of course, it's a lot to ask when you're saying we're going to build this and it's a long time that you'll pay for something like that. Like when you buy a house, you take a mortgage for 30 years, when you buy a house. And we think our community is willing to invest in the future. It's the kind of community we grew up in, and so many people have come back to because, my siblings and I didn't go to Columbia, but my parents definitely voted for that school to be built. And now their grandchildren go there. And we know that there are deep roots in this community. And I think the community will see that this plan isn't just for right this minute. It is for right this minute, but it's going to be used for a long time. And it's the right thing for this community now and going forward. And the last little piece that I think contributes to that is that even when I was in high school in the 90s, we had to graduate. We had to have 100 hours of community service. That was a huge thing for us, but it definitely taught us the need to serve our community. And now that we're adulting, I think that's the thing we say. We serve our community with dollars. And it's just one more way that we can serve this community going forward for a long time. And just like our parents paid it for our grandkids, hopefully our grandkids get to go to this place too. I mean, this is our community. I think there's a lot of people that aren't going anywhere.
Thank you for listening to them.
Just to confirm, so KECC, that'll still have its current use of
housing our administration and our preschool?
As far as I understand, yes, of course, the process after, approval takes time. So I guess you'd kind of have to wait and see. I mean, there will be some spaces that could be flexed, but as of right now, I think that's what's important to our community is that the preschool remains here and this building remains in use.
Thank you for your presentation and all your work and everyone who worked to get us to this point. And you've done a lot of thoughtful and important work here, so thank you.
I have one more question. Can you share just a little bit about time frame going forward?
Oh, not us.
Sure. So big picture, very big picture timeframe going forward is that the board has an opportunity to approve this plan would be next week. And then things need to be filed within the state of Ohio by November 20th. And that would allow the district to then put this to the voters March, I think 16th is it, of 24 or 19th. Okay. So that's the presidential preliminary. So we'll take all the signs out in our yards now and replace them with other ones in 4 months. From there, if it is successful, it would be about 18 months of design. Building the size needs time to make sure that folks are listened to and heard and things are done. So it's a safe building that meets all the goals of the district. And then construction would be about 24 months after that. 24 to about 30, depending on just the kit of parts. It'll be determined in design. So you're looking at around 2027, 2028 when the building would be ready.
Okay, thank you.
Have any further questions? Go ahead, Mrs. Phillips.
I was just going to say thank you very much. The presentation was very thorough. I can tell you dove deeply into all of the data. It was right at your fingertips, so I appreciate all of your hard work and the rest of the CAC committee, the district administrators and everyone that helped create the plan.
We're happy to be a part of it.
Yep. Thank you so much, ladies. I second, third that. I know you both talked about the families, all the work we did, the administration and the CAT team. I mean, it was off hour time, it was weekends, and we really appreciate you sacrificing that time as well for the sake of the community. So thank you both. And they both do PTO. We've been in their meetings, and so they've got a lot on their plates. Thank you so much. ladies.
Going to head to that meeting right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so with that, Mr. Morrow, how do we make the soup, sir?
It's tough to follow up. You did a great job.
They did.
Oh, no, but they alluded to the other piece of the puzzle. It's looking at what the community envisions as the best solution to our current problems, but then also taking a look at, okay, so how much does it cost and how are we going to pay for it? So I did want to start out by just prefacing that as a reminder to the board and community that if we did move forward, it would be a bond levy. This is different than what we've discussed in the past here. And a bond is essentially a mortgage. So what we would be asking for is the community to approve the $142 million, and then the district would repay that just like somebody repays their house. It's bond levy is essentially a mortgage, just in kind of different scale and scope. But that's really what we're talking about here. So one of the big questions throughout the process of what is it going to cost? What is the millage going to be on the ballot to levy the property tax to pay for this? So I worked with the Warren County Auditor and our financial advisors to come up with what we expect the ballot language to be. So if we look at $142 million, we expect the ballot language to read 5.97 mils. As the as the community team, advisory team alluded to, as we were going through this process, I was working on the back end because fiscal responsibility, it's a tenet of the board, it's a tenet of the administration. The community reaffirmed it during the first survey, and the community advisory team, that was part of their process and part of their concern through this entire thing. So if you go to the next slide. So throughout the process, keeping fiscal responsibility in mind, we enlisted a team of what I'll call all-stars in their professions. They do a great job. They work with a lot of schools. They have a ton of knowledge. Bradley Payne, Municipal Advisors, RBC Capital Markets, and Dinsmore Attorneys. A lot of brain power between these folks and a lot of experience in kind of the education field. So in conversation with them, the question always came back to and down to, okay, is there a way we can do this project and with less community impact than whatever the ballot says? So the ballot says 5.97. What can we do on the financing side of things to lessen that burden? And they came back and said, absolutely. This is what we do. We work with a ton of districts. Sycamore recently, Worthington recently, they have a whole list of districts that they've worked with to make it more economically feasible for the communities. But go ahead and go back. So in the most simple terms, what we would be doing to lessen the burden on our community is we'd be paying down loans on past projects quicker than we're scheduled to. And then we would be phasing in the payments due on the new projects to lessen that impact. So our community would start paying on this plan in 2025. And we would be using those two mechanisms of paying down old loans, primarily KME and SLE that we're still paying for, still paying that mortgage. And then also phasing in our new payments so people didn't feel that full burden all at once in 2025. So the current projections show that $142 million project would actually hit taxpayer and community bills at 3.5 mils in 2025. So just to give some kind of perspective on what that looks like, millage is complicated words used to basically talk about property taxes and what your property tax bill is made of. But when you talk about the true cost, what does somebody feel? If you look at a home's true value, that's what the Warren County auditor has on his books. That is the value of your home, not what a real estate agent thinks they can sell it for, not what you believe you can sell it for. This is what's on his books. So for every $100,000 that he has value on your home, it would cost you $122.50 annually, or just over $10 a month. And currently, I pulled data from the county auditor a couple weeks ago. The average single dwelling home in Kings was $287,000. It would cost that average home at $287,000, $351.58 every year, or just under $30 every month.
And that bump would occur in 2025.
Correct. Yes, if approved in the election in 2024, the community would actually feel it on their tax bills in 2025. more than happy to entertain any questions this evening. I wanted to give the board kind of a high level overview. We'll be having the experts in the field come in and talk about this some more with the board, but I thought it was important with the community advisory team presenting tonight that the board also hear some of the conversation that we've had with them and that work that we've been doing in the background to try to make this as fiscally responsible as possible.
So by shifting around our debt, if it goes on, it's going to go on at 5.97 mils, but it'll actually come through at 3.5 is the estimate.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep. We'll be paying off some of our old loans and then also phasing in those new payments so you don't feel that kind of big bump in year one. And the current projections show that the community will never feel more than 3.5 mils in new debt from this project. Because the expectation is that this is a desirable community. History shows that it's a desirable community and property values will continue to rise. So when property values go up, tax rates go down. So the projection is that 3.5 is the most additional burden the community would feel at any given time.
And use the word that this is like a mortgage. How many years would be the term?
The term for this mortgage would be 38 years. So the estimate is that a new school building will last at a bare minimum 40 years and most of the time much longer. So they allow those loans to go out nearly 40 years, so 38 years.
And then what was the date that we're hoping to get this on the ballot in 2024?
If the board elected to move forward with the master plan, it would be the March election, which is March 19th. We'd have to hit some milestones and some steps along the way, but that's a realistic possibility.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't have my calendar in front of me. That doesn't come across during spring break, does it?
Mela.
No.
It's a week
Okay.
before.
Okay.
Tomorrow, you said we go into more detail with this and you'd have some folks come in and discuss this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm more than happy to answer anything if you have something on your mind. And if I say that's out of my realm of expertise and knowledge, we'll punt to them. But we've spent hours and days going through all this information and talking to other schools. So like Sycamore, I mentioned them. I've had conversations with their former treasurer about this process and watched their old board meetings. So have pretty good, very good handle on all of this information. But yeah, we want the experts to come and talk about it because I'm sourcing them on all the slides, but they're the people that do this for a living and do this for school districts. So I think it's important the board hear from them directly.
Absolutely.
Since this is somewhat a new way to finance and pay down old debt and then
Mhm.
as you explain this, so if we didn't do this, what would 5.97 mils cost a taxpayer?
I'll have to get back to you with that information. Honestly, I haven't been living in the 5.97 mil kind of realm.
Appreciate that.
So I just haven't spent that much time on it, looking at ways that for it not to be 5.97. So
Okay.
I can actually absolutely get that.
Okay, just to see what type of a cost savings are we talking about?
Absolutely. We'll have that ready for you.
Thank you.
So I understand the ballot would say 5.97.
Mhm.
When we had a bond for SLE and KME, do you have a record of what the millage was on those?
Sure do. Just give me 1 second. So right now, we're making payments, the community's making payments on KME and SLE.
Mhm.
And also it's kind of additions and improvements at Burns, the current junior high, the current high school. It's kind of all lumped in together.
Okay.
So it was passed at 6.07 mils. But we're collecting at 3.5. So that's kind of the proof in the pudding, so to say, that as the property values go up, the rates go down.
Okay, so say that one more time for me.
Yep,
We started at 607.
correct.
That was on the ballot when those were
Mhm,
passed.
correct.
Property values in Kings have gone up.
Yes,
And so now we are collecting at what?
3.5.
3 point.
And just to, oh, I'm sorry. I was going to just say, and just for the community and the audience at large, Mr. Morrow, why do we do that?
Why do we?
We put a millage on at a certain number, property values go up, the millage drops because
Because as values rise, we don't collect more money from households. We collect kind of that set amount, whether that's during an operating levy or during this. We have to collect enough to make a payment. So as home values go up, we don't need to collect at that higher rate.
and we cannot collect more.
That is correct. Cannot.
Gotcha.
We'll work very closely with the county auditor to make sure that's not the case.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Cowan.
That's okay. I was just gonna ask if you happen to know for that SLE KME issue on the ballot, what was the projected term for that also 38 years? Do you happen to know?
I don't have that in front of me now. I can get that information.
Okay, thank you.
I can say that things have changed since that. KME, SLE, Burns improvements, and junior high improvements was $23.5 million back then. So that kind of shows that costs go up pretty quickly. That was back in the early 2000s. So it's lots changed since then.
And this might be a question for SHP, but what is the increase that you've seen in buildings since COVID? I guess COVID is what changed the
Yeah.
price of commercial construction.
So construction costs, since March of 2020, commercial construction costs have increased 42% today. So it has skyrocketed, and it's all due to just the world we live in and just materials being harder to produce, labor folks to produce those materials, gas prices. There's a whole lot of factors into it. But I was just in a seminar last weekend and saw the number 42%. And they don't see it. It's not going to just slow down dramatically. So things are only getting more expensive right now.
So expect it to continue to increase at that same rate?
I don't know if it'll be at that same rate. Obviously, COVID put a spike into that, but and the other major factor was all the stimulus money that was put in the market. It drove up demand. So there's still shortages today, believe it or not. It's crazy to say that in November of 23, there's still things that are a year out because of all the work that America has done. Things that are a year available. It takes a year to get still. So for commercial buildings. So, but usually it's about 3 to 5% a year. But just the amount of money that the government pumped into our economy drove things up dramatically. So.
Thank you, Charlie. Mr. Morrow, if you could, we're all asking you to dig into the archives. Could you find out what the community property valuation was at that
Absolutely.
that ballot initiative for KME and SLE?
Mhm.
Just give the community just a sense of how much property values have gone up over the time.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you. We have any more questions for Mr. Morrow regarding this? Because we're going to move to treasurer topics. All right. Well, with that, next on the agenda are the discussion items for the treasurer. So we'll continue with Mr. Morrow.
Thank you.
Well,
Items 1 and 2 are the normal monthly minutes from the prior month. I ask that the board take a look and let me know if you see any issues with those. We've got number 3, financial items. I will tell the board that waiting on a piece of information from the county and a piece of information from the state to finalize the November forecast that I plan to have to the board well in advance of the meeting, but I'll present on at the meeting next week as far as the updated forecast. I gave the board a kind of sneak peek last month, but this is the time of year where valuations are sent to the state from the county and the state's finalizing enrollment numbers. So we're kind of waiting to piece all that together this week before I give the full update. Item number 4 is wellness event. We held a wellness event for our employees on October 20th. It was a PD day. We actually had all of our insurance vendors. We did flu shots, and we also did I call them mini physicals, all in the junior high gym. So we kind of had a buzzing gym, so to say, especially using the flu shots as a driver to get people in the door. That's always a huge event. And the goal was, 1, flu shots are great. 2, the mini physicals, so staff can potentially catch something that they didn't know with their blood sugar or their blood pressure. To maybe it would be appropriate to follow up with a physician to just help with the health of our staff. And as part of that, Anthem gives us money to use on wellness initiatives. You guys may remember this from last year, but I worked with the KEA to come up with prizes to raffle off to help drive participation. So I asked that the board approve the prizes listed that are paid for by Anthem to raffle off. Pretty nice stuff.
Yeah,
Were they all claimed?
right.
Excellent prizes, yes.
Board members are not eligible.
Fortunately not, sir.
Do we have any more questions or questions regarding discussion items for Mr. Morrow? Right. Moving forward, next are the discussion items for the superintendent, Mr. Sears. Looks like you have no items this, I just wanted to make sure it didn't update. Okay, perfect. Next are discussion items from the assistant superintendent regarding HR and business. So this would be Mr. Spinner and Mr. Lucky.
Good evening, President Belfram, Kings Board of Education. 4 items under our section this evening, 2 of which I'm going to speak of, 2 of which I will pass off to my colleague, Mr. Lucky. I'll start with number 1, which is personnel items, talking about resignations and retirements, new staff members, miscellaneous items, and supplementals and stipends. I would like to point out 1 item under resignations and retirements and congratulate Ms. Cheryl Warner on her retirement following a brief stint in Mason. Ms. Warner began her teaching career in the Kings Local School District at J.F. Burns Elementary in 1988, where after 35 years of making a difference, a positive difference and a positive impact in our students, she remains today. So I would like to congratulate Ms. Warner on her retirement and wish her nothing but the best in her future days. Any questions with regards to our personnel items, section number 1?
I had one question,
Yes,
Mr.
Mr.
Spinner,
Belford.
because I didn't have a chance to look. So with the Campbell Guard adjustments, was that from the correction from the September 19th board approval amount? Was that up or down? Just curious.
Those went down.
Okay,
Those went down.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
For a spring sport, for lacrosse, when would somebody who's going to be coaching for that, when would I see them on personnel? Because I'm looking for my niece's name, so I
Sure.
can make sure I don't vote for that particular item.
I understand, Ms. Callan, I have to get back to you on that
Okay.
and check with our athletic director, Mr. Taylor, as to when he typically puts our spring sports on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your patience on that. Additional questions with regards to personnel items? Item number 4 has to do with a board policy first reading. I had the pleasure of meeting with Dr. Norm Burkhart from Neola last week. and we reviewed 22 policies that we're bringing to you this evening. I would like to point out that 21 of those policies are revisions dating back to 2003, having to do with changes in Ohio Administrative Code, Ohio Revised Code, and federal law. We do have one new policy, policy 5337, which pertains to care of students with active seizure disorders. Happy to answer any questions about the policy revisions we're bringing to the table this evening for a first reading. Second reading will occur next Tuesday, November 14th.
Are they fairly minor revisions, just language?
A lot of them have to do with language and terminology, changes in OAC, ORC, and federal law. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you for marking those up for us to make that easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's my pleasure. Mr. Lucky is going to speak about items 2 and 3.
Thank you, sir. Just two items there. You'll see our annual bus routes and stops, all 113 pages of it. We have to redact a lot of the information, but ask the board to approve the bus stops for this year, as well as some additional in lieu of transportation. So those will trickle in throughout the year. So you may see those some months, and I think a bulk of them are in, but you'll start to see some more come in possibly throughout the year as they come in.
So are the bus routes and stops pretty much set now? We're good.
Yeah, just to speak to that a little bit, we appreciate the community's patience through that process of the adjustment to the 3-tier as well as the adjustment to the scheduled SLE. We don't take those moves lightly at all. There's lots of discussion on how that happens to impact in the least way possible when we make those moves.
And if I may, Mr. Lucky, so now with the bus routes and stops, I know we talked about when we were discussing tiered busing, looking for opportunities potentially to combine stops and what have you. And I was looking at it and I saw how many pages it was. So I'll be honest, I just waited to ask. But it looks like, I mean, with the change, we're able to pretty much keep a lot of the stops that we have. But it doesn't seem significantly less to me. Kids are still able to get picked up near the house or in proximity to where they were prior.
Our stops have changed a bit.
Okay.
The efficiencies that we've pushed very hard for is the number of students on a bus so that we're not rolling around with 15 students on a bus. So October, third week of October was bus count week. So we have counts in. We're actually doing another count week currently to account for students that were in DC. So we have the ability to do that. But I have them do, that's an official state count, but I have them do a count very regularly to make sure what adjustments need to be made. And the other part of the count is it's not always to add kids to a bus. It may be to shift kids off of a bus that is more crowded than another one for efficiency for time. Big thing is you might have a bus with 68 kids on it and they might be on the bus for 5 minutes because it exists. You have one stop at a complex, the whole bus gets off at the same stop. So you're trying to find that sweet spot of number of students on that bus, efficiency of the route, and the time that they're on there. We want to keep that time as low as we can when we can do it.
Thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Spinner, Mr. Lucky? All right. Next on the agenda, I see no items for the assistant superintendent regarding educational programs. Mrs. Martin, Mr. Freeman, you're off the hook tonight. Oh, you had?
Want to say thanks to Mrs. Sellers for her report.
Yes.
Kim took on for the teaching and learning department, well, really for all of us, the whole entire Aaron's Law and House bill, and has made a point since last spring to dive into it and work with the counselors, the administrators, all of us, the community agencies. Her probably 10-minute presentation is hundreds of hours of work. So we really do appreciate what Kim has done around this. Matt and I jokingly, when we go to our teaching and learning director meetings, people talk about this and we just kind of smile because it doesn't sound like they have a Kim. So we do appreciate all of Kim's hard work on this and we'll keep you updated.
Absolutely. Yeah, no one else has a Kim. All right, and next on the agenda are the items presented by the board. Have anything for this evening? I'll just second Mr. Sears. There's a lot of great things going on. The volleyball team. I think most of the people in this room here, our administrative team, were at the community performance for the marching band last night. And that was fantastic. They've done a tremendous job. There's just, I know Mrs. Phillips will discuss a lot of the student achievement, but it's really buzzing around here. We'll really be buzzing on Friday. So looking forward to it. What else?
I agree. There's just so many great things going on. I even think about like our high school counseling staff. I mean, they've worked their tails off the first couple months
Yeah.
of the school year. I mean, it's November 1, so a lot of those applications for
Yeah.
college are in, and I know that's a lot of work on that staff.
Yeah.
So thank them for all their hard work as well.
Absolutely. Good call out, Mrs. Croft. Yeah. Anyone else have anything to share? All right. Next on the agenda are legislative updates. Mr. Skrull, did you have anything? this evening?
Nothing tonight. I'll have a report next week.
All right. And Mrs. Phillips, next. All right, for student achievement liaison. So let's see here. We do have executive session. We will enter into executive session for the following purpose: to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, conferences with the board's attorney to discuss matters which are the subject of pending or imminent court action. And with that, may I have a motion for us to enter into executive session for the evening?
I'll make that motion.
I will second the motion. Mr. Morrow?
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Cowan,
Yes.
Ms. Groff,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips.
Yes.
Entering into executive session. Thank you. I don't believe we'll have any further business after executive session, so we'll be adjourning at that point. So everyone have a good evening.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you to all our guests for coming this evening.